called motor neuron disease. Life expectancy is 2 years.
I want us to be together for as long as we've got.
It'll affect everything.
You don't realize what lies ahead. This is going to be a very heavy defeat.
But I love him. And he loves me. We're going to fight this illness together.
We did tests very early on, and I knew that I needed to age him, so I knew that we had to get him cast, I knew that we had to put prosthetics on him, and I wanted to see how far we could go with, again, making his face look like it had moved and it had dropped. I put little head shapes underneath the wigs. I wanted to see how far, all the aging on his hands, because also your hands get quite twisted. And so the process, we did tests, we did 2 or 3 tests to find the end look. We used lots of mouthpieces. I got Chris Lyons from Fangs FX. He came in and we did mouth casting, and we did all the different stages of how far we could push Eddie's jawline down visually, as well as actually pushing it with plumpers, and also the effect of his teeth like that. We actually put plumpers in that were moulded so that his teeth were risen on one side, therefore looking like they had sloped down. So it was lots of little tricks like that in the mouth. And and Eddie was very keen. He'd already done quite a lot of work with regards to movement. And he didn't want to be restricted. So there was one point when we did a test on him, we had some aging makeup on it. And he said, it's too much, I can't move my face. So we went back and we pulled it back and made it much softer. So it was a whole process of lots of testing and sitting down and finding this end process. And once I knew what he looked like at the beginning, and I knew what we were going for at the end, and then I could track the movement of going through. And he had several wigs, he had 3 wigs. He had different plumpers that very slowly did that changing of his jawline. And in fact, the actual full prosthetics, the aging, right at the very end, he was probably only in those for about 4 scenes. We only shot with him in full prosthetics for 3 days. Otherwise, it was all makeup. We did use sort of prosthetics to, again, the twisting was making his shoulder come up a bit more, so we had little paddings on underneath. His knees had paddings. Again, it's to make him look like he was wasting away. It was about scale. It was about making him shrink. And what was brilliant is the collaboration that I had with Stephen Noble, costume designer, JP Kelly, the production designer, because of course what they were doing was exactly the same. So we worked very closely together. And as I was trying to make him shrink and his body start to twist, Stephen was making his costumes slightly bigger. And JP was making his wheelchairs slightly bigger as well. So it was all about all of us working and collaborating together, and this whole scale thing going on, which hopefully I think everybody agrees that was very, very successful.
Yeah, what's quite remarkable with it, and it kind of makes sense the way you talk about it now, that when I found out that the film wasn't shot in chronological order,
No.
and watching it, trying to think how, to me, unimaginably difficult it would be to be Eddie, to wake up and say, okay, in the morning I've got to be at this stage of disability, in the afternoon I've got to be at that stage. It must have helped an enormous amount to know that you were going to have this tweaking of your look for each of those different stages.
Well, what I always do when I break a film down, when I do the continuity, I literally do every single scene. I break down the whole movie, and I do this for every character. And I write what I think they should look like, and then we work out the wigs and whatever we're doing. So every single scene is written down. It's all there. I run it past the director. I run it past the actors. I get their input because, of course, Eddie would know exactly where he was at every point in it, because he's got his own map, his own mind map of his journey as Stephen Hawking. Obviously, James was very, very keen that it was seamless. He almost wanted Stephen and I not to put the period look in, which we were desperate to, because we had to have our time journey as well. And obviously, I have my supporting artists that I use for that more than the main artist. And so what we would do is we had this book, and Eddie and I, every morning, I mean, the very first day of shooting, I'm sure it's quite well known, Eddie said, we did 3 looks on the very first day. We did his early look, we did the first time he walked with sticks, and we had him in the wheelchair. So he had every single look on day 1, so we had to know what it was. And this continuity book was our Bible, and we would go through it, and Eddie and I would look at it, and he does it, and in fact, I've done it for the latest film I've just worked with him on, The Danish Girl. We have, and I take photos, and I do drawings, and what we do is we go through it, and Eddie would often go, let me look back, I want to look at the other scenes, and then he looks at his journeys that he's doing. So it's our Bible, and we're constantly going backwards and forwards. But then there'll be some days he would come in and he'd say, this scene is really important. This is the scene when I say goodbye to Jane Hawkin, and I want you to push it a bit. So we would slightly come out of the continuity, and I actually ended up putting him in, using the mouthpieces from a much later scene, because he really wanted to push the look. So there's movement in there as well, and it's that massive collaboration that you have with your actor, which is so lovely and exciting.